what evidence do we have that a merely secular representation, a rational representation of our ethic, is going to provide us with a motive force that would be sufficient for us to do such things as identify what's valuable about our culture and be motivated to sufficiently protect it, assuming that there's something worthy of protection.
But we know what a few of those things are, and they have nothing to do with what's on the inside of a church or a synagogue or a mosque. They have to do with things like free speech. Right, like the trench we are all fighting in is, at least one of them, is defense of the free exchange of ideas. And that is put in peril by many kinds of orthodoxies, but some are the old orthodoxies, the blasphemy laws, and the people who want apostates to be killed for leaving, in this case, Islam. So those are some of the sacred. I would, if we were going to list the sacred artifacts of art that keep our society worth living in, I think the list is going to be very long before we start getting to the actual sacred objects of any one faith. It'll be things like freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and the free exchange of ideas across boundaries. The fact that we are no longer religiously or linguistically or geographically partitioned in the ideas we can entertain.
Well, it seems to me, though, like, and this may be my own idiosyncratic reading of the domain, but when I look at something like I've often considered a cathedral dome, let's say, and there are very old cathedral domes that have an image of Christ put up against the dome, right? So as creator of the cosmos, okay? And I'm trying to look at that from a psychological and even a biological perspective. And what I see is the elevation of a particular image that represents an ideal. And so the Christ that's represented on the dome of a cathedral is something that's projected up into celestial space. So it's an ideal to which you are supposed to be subordinate, or that you're supposed to embody. And the ideal is the ideal of the Logos, technically speaking. The Logos, the Word made flesh, which is not only the Word, free speech for lack of a better term, but also the embodiment of that, elevated to the highest principle. And that is given status as the creator of the universe. And the reason for that, in part, and this is written into the Judeo-Christian doctrine right from line 1, is the idea that it's through the discourse that you value so much that we actually engender the world as such. And that is a divine principle. And it's also, in my reading, the divine image of God that men and women are made in. And so what I see in the underlying metaphysic, where you see superstition and fundamentalism, and look, fair enough, and it's not like I would ever argue that that's not a danger. I see the imagistic and dramatized representation of exactly the idea that you hold to be paramount above all else, which is your commitment to truth, expressed in speech.
Okay, well, so my concern, and this is where I started with you, is that you could give the same charitable reading of astrology, and you'd even be tempted to do it as we talk about astrology, as you showed at the outset. Now,
but I don't think why is it a charitable reading, Sam? Like, how else would you explain the existence of something like a cathedral with that image? Like, what the hell were people doing when they built that?
I'm saying we could. It's by dint of mere historical contingency and questionable luck that we're not living in a world where the cathedrals have stained glass windows with signs of the zodiac on them. Right? We could be in that world.
Well, we are. We were
very close to being in that world.
We are in that world to some degree, because the astrological endeavor in the Judeo-Christian landscape expanded to incorporate Christianity. And there's an entire astrology of Christianity, including representation of Christ as the sun.
So
we are in that world.
So my point is that we recognize that the literal claims of astrology, the mechanism by which astrologers think it works, is intellectually bankrupt, right? And if any significant mayhem were being caused by people's commitment to astrology, if we had presidents of the United States who couldn't get elected unless they paid lip service to a literal belief in astrology, if we had presidents who were consulting their astrologers to figure out when to meet with other world leaders, right? This would be a problem that rational people would recognize. I mean, astrology can be disproven in a single hour. You just simply have to go to one hospital in one city sometime and find two unrelated children born in the same within 20 feet of each other, and follow their lives. And if they have different lives, then the signs of the zodiac mean nothing.
Part of your argument is, and validly so, is how in the world do we determine which revelatory axioms are worthy of respect and of maintenance? And fair enough, Sam.
But maybe none. Maybe not revelatory. Maybe it is just a matter of conscious agents like ourselves having better and better conversations.
Well, it is certainly partly that. It is certainly partly that. But let me explain.
Because again, revelation in my book is nothing other than the record of past conversations. So you've either got Iron Age conversations shaping your worldview, or you have conversations like these shaping your worldview.
Or you have both. You can have both.
Yeah,
but then you have a dialogue with the past.
But which brings me to Marcus Aurelius. I read him with great pleasure and astonishment, frankly. I mean, it is such a modern and edifying take on ethics and one's own personal well-being, and just not being encumbered by thoughts and vanities that are so easy to cut through once you notice them, but so captivating and deranging of your life when you don't. And there's more wisdom in that book than almost any book I can name, and you don't have to believe any bullshit to honor it and use it.
Let me offer you a continued explication here. And you didn't answer my question about what all these crazy medieval people were doing, spending almost all of their excess capital building a representation of the sky and putting an image on that. So just hang on a sec. Okay. So let's talk about what it would mean to embody the truth. So there's a deep idea in Christianity that this is what it would mean. It would mean to confront the suffering of life voluntarily to its fullest, which would mean to accept the necessity of death and betrayal at the hands of your fellow men without undue bitterness. To accept that voluntarily and to still understand that your fundamental ethical task is to work towards the redemption of the world. And that's associated with that image that's cast upon the heavenly dome. And that isn't a charitable reading, Sam. That's an essential analysis of the fundamental doctrines of Christianity.
Yes, but I could do the same thing with Buddhism and give you a slightly different story, but nonetheless inspiring and edifying. And I could do the same thing with
you can't do it with rationality.
But I can do it with Greek. No, that's not true. I can do it with Greek mythology. I can do it with any of these domains. But the crucial bit for me is that in order to make use of those stories, I don't have to believe in revelation. I don't have to believe that you get everything you want after you die.
I'm not sure Jordan's suggesting that you do.
But I'm talking about the applause of conventionally religious people who think that their conventional religion is in some way cashed out or redeemed or supported by the reading you're giving now of Christ in the starry heavens. It's not, unless you're adding this other piece, which is some probabilistic claim that, yes, this book probably was dictated by an omniscient being, unlike any other book. Or maybe the Muslims are right, that Archangel Gabriel did show up to Muhammad in his cave and give him the one final revelation, never to be superseded. And just on the merits of the text, we know that's not true. We know, for all it gets wrong and all it fails to get right about the nature of our circumstance, we know that book is not the best book ever written on any topic. And here I'm speaking of the Quran, but it's true of the Bible. It's true of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. But no one's claiming that about the Meditations, and that's a crucial difference. It's a difference that explains so much unnecessary suffering in our world. And again, what I fear about the way you talk about religion is that at the end of all these conversations, I'm still not sure what you believe on that point, frankly. And if I'm not sure, no one out there is.
Well, I don't know why you would expect to be sure about what someone believes. How do you think that any one of you are capable of fully articulating what you believe? You certainly aren't. You are not. That's completely ridiculous. You're not transparent to yourself by any stretch of the imagination. You act out all sorts of things that you can't articulate.
But how about a best guess? Yeah.
You know, if you look, let's go all cognitive neuroscience on this, shall we? 99% of your processing is unconscious. You're not capable of articulating yourselves. If you were, you'd be omniscient.
Okay,
but don't give me any nonsense about that.
But that is a. I've never heard so many people applaud an evasion of a simple question.
It was a good one,
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
It was a very...
Okay, honestly, yes, everything you just said about not being fully transparent to yourself is true, and you are ruled by committee in there all the time, no doubt. But I'm asking what you actually believe. I mean, there's several things I can ask. I mean, almost any one of these threads can pull the whole tapestry. But to take Christianity as an example, what do you believe about the origin of this sacred book, the Bible, Old and New Testament? Do you believe that just maybe it has a status unlike any other book, or is it simply old writing of human beings just like ourselves?
I think it's both.
Okay, so but so what does that mean? That you're saying that there's somebody who's taking dictation that is unlike any other dictation. So Homer, though
Well, Sam,
creative,
it's not
or
like
Shakespeare, though creative, was doing
understand
something
the
else.
sources of inspiration.
Okay, but
you know, if you
but
talk
everyone's
to
been
creative
inspired.
people, if you talk to creative people,
Yes,
you know,
okay,
they often describe themselves as something approximating a conduit through which higher wisdom is pouring.
Again, you're dodging. Shakespeare could say that, and
Yes.
and any writer can say that. Ultimately,
yes.
right?
And it's also the case that we would rank order those writers, which is why you pointed to Shakespeare, in terms of the generalizable validity of their revelations.
Sure.
And so, well, look, so you run into the same issue. You know, you criticize the Bible, and look, fair enough. You know, but you're also evading a very important issue, which is how do you quantitatively rank the contributions of literature without assuming that there's a hierarchy of revelation?
There's a hierarchy of wisdom. Sure, there's a hierarchy of human wisdom. I will grant you that every day of the week. But But we're talking about primates like ourselves having conversations, and this is the most important game we can play. I mean, this is the best game in town, and it has always been so. But people are imagining, and it includes, as you said at the outset, what I would call spiritual experience. And spiritual experience admits of a fact-based discussion about the nature of human consciousness. And
why do you allow that as an exception? Because
it's not an exception; it's part of the data set. So it's possible to have
so this is spiritual experience without the possibility of concretized revelation.
No.
So it's a formless spirituality that you're advocating.
No. You can have. I'm not even discounting the possibility that there are invisible entities out there in the universe far smarter than ourselves who we could possibly be in dialogue with. I mean, there are many strange ideas that we could defend to one or another degree. I mean, there are people walking around speculating that we might be living in a computer simulation, that all of this is being run on some hard drive of the future, or some alien supercomputer. Now, that you can actually, I mean, Nick Bostrom at Oxford gives a very cogent argument in defense of that thesis. Right? Now you can deal with that on its merits. I'm not saying the universe isn't stranger than we suppose or even can suppose, but one thing we know is that when you read the Bible, you can turn every page of that book, and you will not find evidence of omniscience. You will not find anything in there that someone as smart as Shakespeare, or actually a little bit dumber, could have written.
No,
right?
I don't think that's true, Sam. There are incredibly
whatever
else you might say about the biblical writings, there are incredibly potent narratives embedded within them. It's impossible to write something, virtually impossible to write something like Cain and Abel. It's a paragraph long, and it's absolutely
you're saying the
unforgettable.
Shakespeare of 3,000 years ago couldn't have written Genesis?
He couldn't have written Cain and Abel, not in 10 sentences.
So then who
Cain and Abel is 10 sentences long.
So then
and it contains more wisdom than you can dig out in a lifetime.
So now we're getting to the nub of it. Then you think that was not the product of a human mind?
I think it was the product of a vast collection of human minds working over millennia.
Okay, so we have a committee of Shakespeare's. So, but still, we're just dealing with people. We've just got people.
Well, but
this concession, if indeed you're making it, and I'm still not sure, is the eradication of traditional Christianity.
Look, if something is deeply wise, it's reflective of a deeper reality. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it wouldn't be wise.
I'm in love with deeper realities.
So what's the deeper reality that something as wise as the story of Cain and Abel reflects? What's the reality?
A landscape of mind that that either takes great training, great luck, or pharmacological bombardment of the human brain to explore.